In July of 2006, Ubisoft, the creators of $100 million franchises like Assassin's Creed, Far Cry, and the Tom Clancy series, purchased the rights to the Driver IP, the series developer Reflection Studio, and all previously released titles from Atari for $19M. M what? GameIndustry.biz. IGN says $24 million. What is 19M? After purchasing the Driver IP, Ubisoft went on to publish Wii and PC ports of Driver Parallel Lines, and then went on to only release one mainline series entry, Driver San Francisco. While Reflection Studio was working on San Francisco, with Ubisoft unsure where to take the Driver franchise next, they had another studio, Ubisoft Montreal, working on an alternate version of the franchise's next installment. This game didn't feature Tanner, the longtime series protagonist, or any other characters from the series for that matter. But much like Driver San Francisco, this game had a big gimmick to the gameplay. Instead of being able to shift from car to car like in San Francisco, this one's main gameplay hook would involve hacking things around the city, like traffic lights and bridges, along with having on-foot segments emphasizing on parkour and combat. They then went on to build the Disrupt engine before the game was ultimately scrapped, and later repurposed as an all-new IP titled Watch Dogs. Watch_Dogs follows a Chicago gray hat hacker named Aiden Pierce. After a job goes wrong, a hit is called on him, but the fixer attempts to murder Aiden while he's in his car as he's returning from a fishing trip with his niece Lena and nephew Jax. But the fixer accidentally kills his niece Lena instead, setting Aiden off on a revenge mission to unravel the mystery of who called the hit and figure out how did the job even go wrong in the first place. The event of his niece's death not only sets off Aiden on this revenge mission, but also makes him take on the role of the vigilante. Aiden gains his public presence by using his hacking abilities to become a protector of Chicago, stopping everything from petty crimes like carjackings and muggings to taking down serial killers and bringing down an entire trafficking operation. And all of that setup makes it sound like a really cool game. But if we take a step back and look at the history of Watch Dogs, it actually had a somewhat controversial release. The game was revealed at E3 2012, and the trailer was praised as being one of the greatest graphical showcases of its time. It won several Best of Show awards, and ended up winning even more when it was shown off again before its release in 2014. But when people got their hands on the game, they realized the game they got didn't look nearly as good as what was shown off at E3. Ubisoft, more like Bamboozle Usoft. Despite the outcry from players about the graphical downgrades, the game sold over 4 million copies in its first week, and then went on to sell another 4 million copies in the first month. It also was pretty positively received by critics and spawned 2 sequels. It was later discovered that the game wasn't actually ready to show at the E3 press conference, because the team making it didn't know what their limitations would be on the next generation of hardware. But as they always do, the higher-ups decided to show it anyways, running on a way overpowered PC, knowing that the game probably wasn't going to look that good anyways. They also denied any claims that this was ever a Driver game, but they did later confirm that the Disrupt engine was indeed built for a Driver game. So they were just lying a lot at this time. Ubisoft, more like, you not be telling the truth, be soft. But I didn't know anything about any of that when I went to pick up my Xbox One in 2014. And I was standing in GameStop debating between Dead Rising 3 and a game I knew nothing about other than that it was a GTA clone with hacking and a big spider tank. Luckily for Watch Dogs, I was still playing GTA Online at the time, as I did for the next 9 years, so I was looking for more of that and Watch Dogs got my money. I then took home my new Xbox One, played Watch Dogs for about 10 hours or so over the next week, and then I went back to GTA. As I picked up other games like Sunset Overdrive and Dead Rising 3 for the Xbox One, Watch Dogs continued to sit on my shelf. Even years later, after I had spent hours and even days diving through Watch Dogs 2 and Legion and both of their DLCs, Watch Dogs 1 was the game that slipped through the cracks. I would think about playing it every now and then, like, hey, maybe it's time I finally play through Watch Dogs 1. And then I'd find something else to play and it'd go back on the shelf. That was until a few weeks ago when I saw a YouTube video. And then another YouTube video. And then about 4 more YouTube videos about Watch Dogs. So I decided I would make a YouTube video about Watch Dogs. Okay, so I actually watched a bunch of videos, and then I thought, guess I'll finally play Watch Dogs. But then I realized doing this video thing has pretty much ruined how I consume all media, because now as soon as I start playing a game or watching a movie or a TV show, I immediately start taking mental notes, and by the end of it, I want to make a video about it. And I have to remember that nobody wants to watch a 20-minute video about how much I enjoyed Ricky Stenicki. But I knew from just the opening moments of Watch Dogs that I was going to talk about it, because I have a lot to say about this game. First off, I was so impressed by it visually. Even knowing about the graphical controversy, it didn't look 10 years old at all. But I do feel it is important to let you know that I did play this on an Xbox Series X, with all of the update patches at 60 frames per second and HDR on. Someone please draw me a map to my own ass so I can kick it for sounding so much like a Redditor. But the game really does look incredible with these modern upgrades. It actually now very closely resembles that game that was originally shown off at E3. And I could put this same disc into my launch window VCR and get the same visual quality that everyone complained about when it launched. But it's not 2014. Why would I look at it like it is? But even if I did, I don't think it would be all that bad. I think this was one of those Twitter blew things out of proportion situations. I don't remember it looking bad when I played this in 2014. And while researching this video, I came across this clip from Podcast Beyond from when the game launched, and they didn't have a single problem with it visually.
The reality is, when that game was first shown, it looked amazing. Then we didn't see it for a while, and we heard bad things, and we came out, and now it looks really good too. And people are doing comparisons. Digital Foundry did a comparison of what it looks like, the retail version versus what we originally saw, and they're pretty damn close. And
it doesn't seem like any reviewer did at the time. I couldn't really find anyone complaining about the visuals in general, just that they looked different from the E3 visuals. But looking at it through today's lens, a scroll through the rainy streets of Chicago is pretty visually stunning for a 10-year-old game. I even had a friend install the game to help me boost achievements. Don't act surprised, you know I'm a degenerate. I got the Peppa Pig 100%, I'm not above boosting. But his first comment after installing it was about how good the game looks. There are still some not so great looking visuals, like the hair can be a little blocky, and Aiden's goatee thing kind of looks like a PlayStation 2 texture. It gives real Tony Hawk's Underground vibes. But besides that, the city looks great, and Aiden looks like the singer of Creed in flashbacks. But who are we kidding, that last one's a plus for the visuals. But let's get into Watch Dogs. It's an open world Grand Theft Auto style game, but with the twist of Aiden being able to control the city by hacking it with his cell phone. He can hack everything from streetlights to cameras, the electrical grid, bank accounts to bridges. The concept is so interesting because of all the possibilities that could be there. You need money, you can hack somebody's bank account. The police are after you, black out the city, shut down the electrical grid so they can't find you. Or raise a bridge right after you go over it so they can't go across it. Raise a blocker up in the road so they crash their car. Or even turn all the streetlights green to make everybody run into each other just for the chaos of it. You can blow steam pipes out of the ground or blow up transformers. If you need to get somewhere higher, you can hack a lift and get yourself up there. Say you want a shortcut through a parking garage. Hack the doors open and slip through. When listed out like that, the options seem almost endless. But they're not too endless. While we're looking at this game through a 2024 lens, that also means that we know that there are 2 sequels to Watch Dogs, and one of them is considered to be the best of the series. Even one of Ubisoft's best games they've ever made. But I think something Watch Dogs 1 does so right is leaving the hacking at sort of a bare bones level. Sure, there's a lot of things you can do, but if you have to say maybe sneak into the city surveillance system headquarters and delete files off their servers, you can still use hacking to shut off their comms temporarily or turn off the lights or use the cameras to track who's all in the building. But you still have to physically get Aiden into the building where the server is to download or delete whatever he's trying to get to. The later games have become a little too future techy, with little drones and spiders floating around and platforms to fly in and get you to whatever information you need, without ever putting yourself really in harm's way. Sure, that is an oversimplification on the later game systems, but this game uses hacking as a tool opposed to the only way. The police chase system is also something that the hacking plays a very pivotal role in, because in Watch Dogs, you cannot shoot while you're driving. So your only choice is to hack your way away from the cops. The police do function very similar to the classic star wanted system used in other games, but if all the police are crashed, or you manage to make it far enough away from them, you'll end up in an escape ring. I don't know if that's the actual name for it, I just made something up. Where you can go farther into the next ring to escape, or hide there until the police call off the search, and the best way to do that is to use the hide-in car mechanic, where Aiden will turn the car off and lean back in his car seat, and suddenly everyone just quits looking for him. It's not that ridiculous, but that is also pretty much what happens. If you look at your map when you're hiding in a car, it puts a small little ring around your car, and if whoever is looking for you doesn't pass through that ring, then they won't see you. So if you park slightly over the sidewalk where no car would actually park, then they just don't see that you're there because your ring is just off of the road, and it's like you're invisible. Sometimes they're staring directly at Aiden, and they just go, "Oh man, he vanished." Hi, I'd like to talk to you about our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. God? But if you're a good hacker, you'll probably never need to use this mechanic unless you're looking for a good laugh. But if you're not a good hacker, you can always shoot your way out of a police chase on foot. Remember when I said hacking was a tool? Well, the other tool at your disposal is firearms and gadgets. Watch Dogs is sold as a hacking game, but people never talk about how competent of a shooter it is. The combat in this game rivals many of its contemporaries, and even modern games now. It's a cover shooter. It doesn't feel too stiff and clunky. It kind of feels like an early build of The Division. But what I think really brings the combat back together is not the shooting or the hacking, but a blend of the two. Each combat scenario in Watch Dogs is more like a puzzle. Aiden's just a guy in a trench coat, so he takes a lot of damage very quickly. So standing out in the open just blasting everybody isn't really an option. But you also can't just sit back and hack everyone to death. Sure, you can explode people. I'm not really sure the logic behind it, but you can just hack them and they explode. Last time I checked, there's not like a computer and a grenade, but I'm not a grenade tech expert, so take that as you will. But I do kind of have a theory of what's going on here. The game is based in 2012, which makes me guess that Aiden is hacking Samsung phones, because around that time, the batteries in those blew up a lot, like fairly often. Remember that? Before people's vapes blew up, their Android phones blew up. Just goes to show you that the more things change, the more they stay the same. Android users and vapors. Same douchebag, different device. But the puzzle nature of the combat kind of makes it so your big assault rifle is really like your backup weapon, or even your backup. Each scenario kind of starts with you sneaking around with a silenced pistol, hacking cameras, picking off guards with whatever various hackable objects around them you can kill them with, waiting for someone to distance themselves from the herd and silently beating them to death with a baton, or silently picking them off from a distance with that silenced pistol. And if all of that fails to get you through, throw a homemade IED at them and pull out that assault rifle. The puzzle of the combat really shows itself when doing something like a gang hideout, where the goal is to take down a specific target, but they have to be taken down with your baton, or you fail. If you alert them, you'll have to chase them down, so you really want to get this right the first time. All these different factors and limitations are what make up the combat of Watch Dogs, and all of that mixed with a perfectly crafted city around it ties everything together. And this is actually the thing that draws me into this game the most, the city setting. The game is based in Chicago, and I just happen to hail from the state of Illinois, which means everybody thinks that I live in Chicago. Contrary to popular belief, Chicago is actually a very small portion of Illinois, and you'd never know that because Chicago looks like this. It's one of the biggest cities in the country, but the rest of the state looks like this.
Corporate needs you to find the differences between this picture and this picture. Intel has told us there are at least 7.
Okay, I already see one. Give him. Okay.
They're the same picture.
but I have been to Chicago quite a bit, and this game recreates the city unbelievably well. Even down to landmarks like the Willis Tower, Navy Pier, and the Bean. They recreated the Bean. I've been to the Bean. Oh no, they accidentally put a hole in the Bean. I'm a Bean expert, there's no hole in the Bean. Turns out this is actually due to copyright reasons. Someone owns the rights to the Bean. Please subscribe so I can buy the Bean. I want to own the Bean. Navy Pier also isn't entirely accurate. Last time I was there was a man pissing with his full frontal view to the traffic, and it was a busy weekend, so we were stalled there for quite a while, so he's permanently burned into my version of Navy Pier. But my favorite part about the map is this little section in the upper left corner. This actually isn't included in Chicago, and if you know anything about the state of Illinois map, you may think this is Rockford, possibly. Actually, this place up here in the northwest corner is called Pawnee. And this is not a made-up name. It is also a town in Illinois. A town that is 2 hours closer to St. Louis, Missouri than it is Chicago, which also puts it in the opposite direction on the map. Pawnee is also a place I'm fairly familiar with, and it looks nothing like this version of Pawnee. Well, besides the murder house. But there's no lake or mountains. Pawnee is flat. There is a little town in the Pawnee district that looks a little bit like it could be mildly based on Pawnee. And all of this surrounding area is nowhere near what the area actually looks like. So this would give you the impression that they may have just picked a random name for the town. But the Wikipedia page for Pawnee has claimed it as its own, and they don't have much going for them there. Just let them have it. They can have Pawnee and Watch Dogs. But regardless of their accuracies, both Pawnee and the city of Chicago are beautifully crafted, and the world feels very alive. And that was one of the big pillars of the Disrupt engine. NPCs acting more lifelike. Of course, each one of them is just another generic character model, but due to the profiler, each random character kind of has their own story. Just by looking at someone walking down the street, you can see that they are a teacher or even a scam artist. Every range of person in the city has a small story to tell. Sometimes they vary drastically from person to person, like in the prison, they didn't need to make that big of a leap in crimes, but none of these little individual character stories shine as much as the main plot of Watch Dogs. Another place the city shines is how well it's crafted to aid the story. Okay, it's actually pretty average in that department, but I needed a transition, so let's move into the story stuff. The story is dark and gritty, which is very common for the time. This game somehow feels fresh, yet very of its time. For example, it plays like any other modern game, it looks fantastic, but it has that 2012 still haven't moved on from the Dark Knight tone, and the references also really date the game. Like every time you hack one of these digital signs, you'll get a very timely reference to Game of Thrones or Breaking Bad, or even the Ain't Nobody Got Time for That meme. But I was surprised to see in all of its 2012 darkness that some of that goofy, lighthearted, joking around energy of Watch Dogs 2 is still apparent in this game. The main person that Aiden works with, Jordy, is essentially Deadpool personality-wise at least. He just gets really excited about killing people.
These two nutsacks are some unfinished business from a Gabonese job. You should have seen the way that they tried to take me out. I am driving this beast of a muscle car right out of the 70s. You know when an automobile accident was still called a fucking car crash?
Let's go.
Yeah, so these geniuses here think they're gonna ram me off the road with some plastic, eco-friendly shitbug. It just makes this weird ping and bounces off into a parked van. Here, hold that.
T-Bone and his wild contraptions out in the middle of nowhere is always good for a laugh. Even the enemies are funny, just glitching out in the middle of the street. That's goofy, isn't it? Okay, I'm kidding. He's not glitching out. He's just doing his impression of Aiden's coat. I'm going to go on a quick side tangent here, and then we'll get back to the story stuff. The amount the coat flaps in this game is obnoxious. Somebody on the dev team worked way too hard on these coat physics, and they thought it was the coolest thing they've ever done, and it would look so incredibly cool when he's on a motorcycle. But then, it flapped all the time. Every minute of the game it flaps, but sometimes it just doesn't flap, but only when he's on a motorcycle. But back to the story. It always seemed to me that the conversation around the character of Aiden Pierce was that he was just a generic gruff action movie looking for revenge style character. But you really don't have to dig that deep to see that Aiden is really well written, along with all of his ensemble cast. Yes, he is very John Wick, but really I would say he's closer to a Batman, but his gadgets are replaced with a Windows phone. It's got to be a Windows phone, right? It's got the tiles. That was a dumb joke. There are some scenes in the game that really show his death. Like in one mission, his nephew gets kidnapped and Aiden kills about 30 people to get him back, seeing nothing wrong with it, until he rescues Jax and realizes the kid watched all of it happen through the surveillance cameras, causing him to reflect on the fact that this revenge mission might have made him a bit of a monster.
What did I do? I killed every one of them. What was I thinking? That's not who I am. Is it?
And there are multiple other examples of this self-analysis and character growth. Aiden toes the line of surface-level revenge character and a deeply broken person just trying to make up for their mistakes, or redeem themselves for something that's not even their fault. But this is a Ubisoft game, and what would a Ubisoft game be without an excess of unnecessary side content? And Watch Dogs has more side content than you may ever want to actually play. All your staples are here, of course. Towers to open up the map, collectibles like songs, locations, privacy invasions. Yeah, that one's super weird. We're going to get to that in a minute, but let's get through the rest of these. CTOS breaches, along with QR codes, murder victims, suitcases, and weapons crates as part of larger investigations. And that's just in the collectibles category. There's also city games like chess, poker, slots, and drinking enough shots to kill an elephant while staring longingly into the eyes of a stranger sitting directly across from you. There are digital trips that involves everything from driving a gigantic spider tank through the city, car chases with demon cops, sneaking through a futuristic Chicago hiding from robot guards, bouncing on flowers, and tracking down and silently killing cyborgs. Out of all of that grocery list of things that are unbelievably all over the place, privacy invasions are still by far the strangest. And don't forget that I just read off a list that involved killing cyborgs and bouncing on flowers. The invasions are a collectible needed to get an achievement, so you know I did every one of these. I got no problem being a lowlife to raise that arbitrary number. You just travel throughout the city, hacking into people's webcams and security cameras, and just watching them for a minute. Now, I know what they were going for was this, somebody's always watching you, you're never alone because anyone can spy on your technology. The government is definitely listening to you, you know, that kind of thing. But it's wild that they thought that I want to be the pervy creep looking into people's webcams. Ubisoft really dropped this new IP with, here's this really cool guy that can hack the city and he races cars and shoots guns. But also, if you do this little side thing, he's kind of a pervert. But just pretend like they didn't notice that, because the future of technology is very spooky. But if you don't look at the creepy parts of the privacy invasions, they can be kind of interesting, I guess. I'm slightly exaggerating here. None of them actually get to like a pervy level. But if you don't look into the creepy part of just looking in on people when they think they're alone, these are actually kind of interesting little snapshot stories. This is where I realized how dark this game can get. Sometimes you hack in and it's a mother putting her baby to sleep, or a couple planning a vacation. But also sometimes it's something like a man debating on pulling the trigger, which is wildly far to go with this the internet security is scary thing, but they each only last about 12 seconds before you lose connection. So you never see what the ending is. So sometimes I could care less what's going on in these stories, but then other times they manage to draw me in, much like the profiler stories. And I don't think that that's a thing that Watch Dogs got much credit for. Its ability to tell a million little micro stories. It kind of reminds me of the way like Skyrim will have books of lore, or Resident Evil will have little notes around to fill out the larger story. But in Watch Dogs' case, you're not filling out the main plot, you're just scrolling past a handful of little disconnected stories every few seconds as you wander the street that can be completely passed by, or they suck you in for a minute. But they never take enough time to distract you from the rest of the game. And actually, as I was writing this, I was kind of realizing that this game is trying to talk about the horrors of the future of technology, but it kind of does the same thing to my brain that like a TikTok does. There is what seems like an endless amount of little stories and things I can just keep diving into, one after another, to the point where you distract yourself from the main game, you know, kind of like a TikTok does with life.
Hey buddy, why don't we reel it in a little bit? You're getting a little far into the deep end.
Oh, I am? Sorry, that sometimes gets away from me. That's why I keep a lifeguard on staff, so I don't get too far into the deep end. Just kidding, that was just an excuse to take my shirt off again, because for some reason every time I do that in a video, it gets way more views. I have no idea why either. And I almost completely forgot to mention the online modes. This game does online in a very interesting way. There is a free roam, but the main way you'll be interacting with other players is through invasions. At any time, you can take on an online hacking contract and just drop into another player's game and follow them around secretly, without their knowledge, to hack their data. In your game, you look like Aiden as you always do, but from the other player's perspective, they will be Aiden and you will look like a regular NPC character. And vice versa for them. They just look like a standard person off the street and you're just hacking a random guy. This does a really cool thing at keeping the immersion of your game. Everybody's perspective is the same, yet also reversed. But while someone's secretly hacking you in your game, you can find out that they are in your game if you scan them. You could just be walking down the street scanning people, or you could see a pedestrian doing some really weird stuff that they don't normally do, you know, like stealing a motorcycle. And that's going to tip you off that there's a real person trying to hack you. And the thing I find really fun about these is to see people online are not creative enough for me. The first few invasions, they got me pretty good, but once I understood the concept, I was clowning on fools left and right. There's train tracks above me, you're probably hiding up on the train tracks. Shipping container over there, you're probably hiding in the shipping container. There's a parking lot nearby, you probably got the seat leaned back, and I'm just going to spray bullets through the windshield of the whole parking lot to take care of you. Step up your game.
I am a god.
Besides the invasions, there's stuff like races, your standard free mode, but none of these shine nearly as much as the invasion. Oh, there's also an entire DLC campaign where you play as T-Bone, one of the main characters of this game, and really the Watch Dogs franchise. But I haven't dived into that yet. I'm like 60 hours into this game, and I kind of just want to take a break and play something else for a little bit. And also I want to get this video out. It's been like 2 months. Maybe we'll come back to it later, or maybe even hit the rest of the Watch Dogs franchise. The future could bring anything. But that is the end of looking back at Watch Dogs. Playing this game 10 years later is interesting. Now 2 sequels later, knowing that the Watch Dogs franchise is on ice as of the moment. In my personal opinion, now, after nearly 100%ing all 3 of the games in the franchise, analyzing it front to back, I've come to the conclusion that Watch Dogs 1 is the best Watch Dogs of the series. While I love Watch Dogs 2, I think it set the series on this trajectory that'll be difficult to come back from. They threw away the series' roots and became more lighthearted. It's got the whole Marvel Star Wars thing going on. And I don't hate it for that. You can throw out the roots all you want. But while Watch Dogs 1 can be a little silly, the outrageousness of the later games can almost be overwhelming. There is such a thing as too much of a good thing. I've mentioned multiple times that one of my favorite things about Watch Dogs 1 is the bare bones nature of it. The map is small and manageable, the hacking isn't overly complex or full of too many options, yet you feel like you have a lot of tools at your disposal and a lot of places to explore. But when you have too many options, sometimes it feels like you may only have one. Like, why would I sneak into this building when I can just fly over the top of it and throw a drone in there and take care of what I need? But my big thought for making this video about Watch Dogs was kind of trying to figure out why it was looked down on for so many years. It doesn't seem like anybody really hated it. It seems like people genuinely enjoyed it. But for some reason, anytime I talked to anyone about it, they acted like it was this abomination of a game. Was it the Twitter backlash? Was it people who ran into the same problem I did and they were just busy with something else at the time that it never got a fair chance? Or was it a revisionist history kind of thing that people liked Watch Dogs 2 so much that they turned their back on this one? And honestly, I don't have an answer for it. I have no idea why people acted like it was awful. But the conclusion I came to is that this game isn't bad. It's my favorite of the franchise now. And I've enjoyed playing it so much that it's the only game I've played in the 2 months I've been gone for making these videos. And I've got some more achievements to get, so I'll still be playing it after this comes out. So try to invade me if you want, because I'll clown you out, like I do everyone else. Let me know. I have a public email I'll point you right to when I'll be on. Also, go ahead and tell me your thoughts about Watch Dogs. Did you like it at release? Have you turned around on it now? Or has this video made you want to go play Watch Dogs? Let me know. I'm genuinely curious. Also, don't forget to subscribe so we can buy the bean. God, I want the bean so bad. Also, go to blaster-goblin-shop.fourthwall.com or take a look at the link in the description to get yourself some off-the-panel merchandise, because that's the only show I've made merchandise for. But hey, if we get enough subscribers for the bean, maybe we'll get a subscribe for the bean t-shirt. This one's truly in your hands. You have all the power. Go ahead, get out of here. Go play Watch Dogs.